Well, I was better than the book that Harry wrote because I didn't enjoy that. Seeing the way he rubbished some of the people that work hard for this country. Thought that was outrageous. So look, I think America waking up to Harry and Meghan. I think they're saying that they're not the golden couple everybody thought they were.
January 2026, and the royal conversation is blowing up everywhere. A longtime royal photographer has shared his personal opinion about Prince Harry and Meghan's wedding, and the reaction has been intense. According to him, the atmosphere that day felt nothing like the fairy tale the public was shown, and that alone has people talking nonstop. This photographer, now in his 80s, has covered royal events for decades and has photographed multiple royal weddings across generations. In interviews, he openly said that Harry and Meghan's wedding was the least enjoyable royal event he personally covered, describing the mood as uncomfortable and badly managed in his view. That statement alone sent shockwaves through royal watch circles. What really grabbed attention was his claim that access for photographers was extremely limited that day. He suggested that moments usually shared openly with the press felt carefully restricted and at times deliberately distant. In his words, the energy felt cold, and the press presence was made to feel unwelcome, which stood out compared to other royal weddings he experienced. He emphasized that this wasn't about tabloid-stirring drama. This was his first-hand reaction after decades of working closely around the royal family. From his perspective, the event felt tightly controlled, unusually tense, and far from the traditional warmth seen at similar ceremonies.
Carol, well, she's going to be celebrating privately. I think, she's not one for fuss, as Arthur will definitely tell you in a bit, I imagine. But, she's going to be spending it just with friends, family. She's been incredibly busy this week. It seems as though it's been a week or two of celebrations, and it's been very much a business of getting out and working really hard.
To understand why his comments carry weight, you have to look at his history. He began photographing royals in the late 70s and spent nearly half a century documenting major royal milestones. He witnessed coronations, funerals, global tours, and some of the most iconic weddings in modern royal history. He photographed Charles and Diana, William and Kate, Charles and Camilla, Andrew and Sarah, Edward and Sophie, and many other defining royal moments.
And please come back because, this is a great country and the royal family are very important to us all. And the Queen needs your support, Harry, because, William can't do it all, Catherine can't do it all. The Prince of Wales is taken on the Queen's role now, so he's even more busy. So, Harry's badly needed here, and I hope.
He traveled with the family, worked inside palaces, and observed private situations that few outsiders ever see. So when someone with that level of experience says one wedding stood out in a negative way, it naturally raises eyebrows, especially considering he's seen royal events with family tension, media chaos, and public pressure before, yet still said none compared to the discomfort he felt that day. Whether people agree or disagree, his comments cracked the polished image many believed without question. And once that illusion starts to wobble, the conversation doesn't slow down, it explodes. Arthur Edwards has photographed everyone at the very top of royal life. Camilla, William, Kate, Charles, the Queen, all of them. According to him, they were always professional, polite, and respectful.
Meghan also used to organize setups where she would ask an agency, hey, I'm going to be turning up to a restaurant or an event. Can you photograph me coming in?
They understood the press had a role, and they treated photographers like part of the system, not the enemy. But when it came to Harry and Meghan, Edwards says the experience felt completely different. And now, years later, he's openly sharing his personal account of how that wedding unfolded from his side of the lens. Here's where it really turns heads. Edwards told The Sun exactly how he felt about that day, using his own words, on the record. He said, "The day was a miserable day. I can tell you now, it was the worst royal wedding I ever did because Harry was determined to keep the newspapers away from it as much as possible." That's not speculation. That's his direct quote. Not just difficult, not awkward, the worst in nearly 5 decades of royal work. Edwards explained that unlike any other royal wedding, photographers were pushed far back, forced to shoot from extreme distances.
So the whole time we're thinking that that's her husband, Jack Brooksbank. It turns out, guess who that mystery man was the whole time?
Was it Meghan's guy?
It was Marcus Anderson.
Marcus Anderson, yeah.
Why is she having dinner with Marcus Anderson, and why is he then going home with Meghan and Harry?
He said he had to use an 800mm lens just to photograph guests arriving at the chapel. That kind of lens is massive. It's normally used for wildlife or subjects hundreds of feet away. Edwards made it clear that getting clean, usable images that day felt nearly impossible. Meanwhile, Edwards pointed out a sharp contrast. While outside photographers were held far back, the couple's own hired photographers were positioned just feet away, close enough to capture detailed, intimate shots. From Edwards' perspective, the difference in access felt intentional, and he later described the situation as hopeless for the press. He also referenced past media setups involving Meghan before royal life, saying she had previously coordinated arrival photos through agencies. That contrast, in his view, made the wedding restrictions stand out even more. But the moment that stuck with him the most was the carriage ride. The iconic fairy tale scene the public remembers so well. Edwards was standing in a standard position, the same role he'd held at multiple royal weddings before. At other weddings, couples waved, smiled, and acknowledged the cameras. William and Kate did it. Charles and Diana did it.
I think that Harry, Meghan's spare VI Queenie, said it best. It's downright bizarre that a man, gay or straight, constantly clings to a family like Marcus Anderson does with Harry, Meghan, and their kids. He is like a parasite, always lurking in their shadow.
According to Edwards, that moment was always understood as part of royal tradition. But with Harry and Meghan, he said something different happened. Edwards stated, "When they went past in the carriage, they turned away from me." He emphasized that they saw him, recognized him, and still turned their heads. In his view, that wasn't distraction or coincidence. It felt deliberate, a clear signal that access would be denied, even during the most symbolic moment of the day.
And while I've always thought that Meghan potentially was not actually pregnant, I had initially believed that the child was real.
For Edwards, a man who spent decades documenting royal history, that moment said everything. On a day built around unity and tradition, he felt the relationship with the British press had already fractured. And he was standing right there when it happened. According to Edwards, that wedding moment wasn't accidental. It felt like a message, a clear signal that the press was not welcome and would not be treated with basic respect.
And when he was hot, when him and Fergie got married, I mean, they were just such a hot couple, and I went all around the world with them. And they gave me so much great stuff, great stuff. And you can't forget that. And, everybody makes a mistake in their life that they would hate to be highlighted.
On a day meant for happiness and celebration, he said the atmosphere felt cold, calculated, and deliberately uncomfortable. This is where Edwards really pulled back the curtain. When the interviewer asked him directly whether the treatment of the media felt intentional, his answer was blunt and emotional. He said, "It wasn't just me, it was the whole of the British press. In many ways, we were badly treated." That's a sweeping statement, and it hit hard. He made it clear this wasn't about one photographer or one bad moment. Every major British outlet covering the wedding faced the same restrictions, the same distance, and the same lack of cooperation. According to Edwards, the entire press corps was pushed back and made to feel unwelcome at what should have been a shared national celebration.
And so for Harry himself, he's now, in many people are suggesting, trapped. And as his mother famously said in that line, it's difficult because there's three of us in this marriage. History, truly, according to that source, is repeating itself. Harry is very much sort of whatever is suggested, he has to go along with it.
Edwards didn't sugarcoat how it felt. He described parts of the treatment as harsh and unfair, saying the situation left him genuinely upset. He even said it felt like they were being punished, and that word stuck with him. For someone who spent decades documenting royal history, that feeling was deeply personal. From Edward's perspective, the wedding wasn't just tightly managed. It felt like a deliberate act of control. Instead of focusing on tradition and unity, he felt the media was treated as an enemy rather than a partner in sharing the moment with the public. What made this even more striking was Edward's comparison to the past. For years before this, he described Prince Harry as friendly, professional, and easy to work with. Harry would joke with photographers, cooperate during events, and make sure coverage went smoothly. Edwards even called him a photographer's dream at one point. He said Harry was once one of the most popular members of the royal family, someone the public forgave easily because he came across as genuine and approachable. But then, according to Edwards, something shifted.
They'll be pretty angry about it because, as Piers said, most of it's untrue. I mean, it's the fact that the king briefs the journalist. Now, look, I've been working with him for over 40 years. He's never once briefed me. I've had a few.
He described a specific moment after Harry's relationship began when the dynamic completely changed. During an event in Manchester, Edward said Harry wouldn't even acknowledge him. He recalled that Harry avoided eye contact, didn't speak, and left quickly without interaction. For Edwards, that moment symbolized a deeper transformation, not just in access, but in attitude. For a man who spent nearly 50 years around the royal family, that change was impossible to ignore. And from his point of view, the wedding day was the clearest sign that the relationship between Harry and the British press had fundamentally broken. And there was no turning back.
When the song come on, let me see you get gone. Baby mama, this shot song been pregnant for way too long. Now tell the DJ turn it off.
If she a baby mama,
go ahead.
She gon' do that baby mama.
Work.
She gon' put it on you. She gon' do that baby mama.
Edwards says the shift became impossible to ignore during an event in Manchester, not long after Harry began his relationship with Meghan. According to him, Harry wouldn't even look his way. No conversation, no acknowledgement, no sign of the professional relationship they'd built over years. Edwards said Harry simply got into the car and left, cold and distant, as if their shared history never existed. From Edwards' point of view, this wasn't a slow personality change or someone becoming more private over time. He described it as sudden and extreme. One moment, Harry was warm, approachable, and cooperative. The next, completely shut down. And Edwards openly connected that shift to the start of Harry's relationship with Meghan, based on his own experience.
Meghan Markle is reportedly facing a reshuffle in her inner circle as her new Netflix show With Love Meghan, which was launched earlier this month, faced mixed reactions. So, how many times have we heard Meghan Markle having a best friend? You know, we've had Jessica Mulroney, Serena Williams. I mean, so every time Meghan has a friend, they're a best friend.
Edwards said, "It was just the day he met Meghan, or the day he fell in love with Meghan, and it's all changed since then." That's his exact wording, no interpretation added. He was clear about when he felt the change happened and how sharp it felt from his side of the camera. The situation eventually became so uncomfortable that Edwards made a drastic decision. He stopped covering Harry and Meghan's events altogether. A photographer who dedicated nearly his entire career to the royal family chose to step away, not because of age or workload, but because the environment around them felt miserable to him.
What now would seem to be a very reasonable position of not believing a word coming out of Meghan Markle's mouth about my royal family. Now, most people now agree with me about the veracity of what comes out of her mouth. But at the time, this was deemed so controversial that my company, rather than defending my right to free speech, the network said, you've either apologize for disbelieving her or you have to leave.
In a podcast interview, Edwards explained his reasoning in blunt terms. He said that after Harry met Meghan, Harry became very, very distant and described the experience as deeply depressing. He said being around them felt negative, tense, and emotionally draining, especially due to their attitude toward the media. Because of that, Edwards decided to protect his own well-being. He skipped Harry and Meghan's Australia tour in 2018. He didn't cover the South Africa tour in 2019 either. Instead, he chose assignments with other royal family members who, in his words, still treated photographers with basic professionalism. Edwards even admitted, "I ducked out of them and sort of went with Charles." That's a veteran photographer openly saying he avoided certain royals because of how he felt he was treated. That choice alone speaks volumes. To understand why this matters, you need context. Edwards has covered nearly every major royal wedding in modern history. William and Kate's wedding, he described it as wonderful. Charles and Camilla's ceremony, professional and respectful. Edward and Sophie's wedding in 1999, a positive experience. Andrew and Sarah's wedding, easy to photograph. Even Charles and Diana's wedding back in 1981, despite its pressure, was memorable in a good way.
Yes, I got this direct message from Meghan Markle.
A private message?
Yeah. And it said, hey, I'm a big fan, and I'm so excited you're following me. And this is
She said to you?
It was about 3 years ago. And I replied, and we corresponded quite regularly on Twitter.
But Harry and Meghan's wedding stood apart, and not in a flattering way. Edwards said it was the worst experience of his entire career, and not even close. From his perspective, the treatment of the press that day was unlike anything he'd ever seen in royal history. And that's where the frustration really sits. Other royal couples accepted that media attention comes with the role. The titles, the ceremonies, the public interest, photographers are part of that system. Edwards felt Harry and Meghan wanted the spotlight, but only on their own terms, and that tension changed everything. They wanted the full royal spectacle at Windsor Castle, global headlines, worldwide attention, the biggest stage possible. But at the same time, Edwards felt the press was treated like an enemy. From his perspective, that contradiction is exactly what defines the tension he's now calling out. Wanting the spotlight, while resenting the people who make that spotlight possible.
Oh, the reaction around the world has been extraordinary. Piers Morgan posted on X, we're about 2 months away from the sex tape.
And here's another detail that adds fuel to the conversation. Reports from royal biographer Ingrid Seward suggest Queen Elizabeth herself had reservations about that wedding day. According to Seward, the Queen privately felt Meghan's dress choice was inappropriate for a second marriage in a church setting. In her view, the styling appeared overly flamboyant and out of step with tradition. That detail matters because it connects to a broader pattern Edwards has been describing. The dress, the press restrictions, the overall attitude, all of it, in his opinion, pointed to a disregard for long-standing royal customs. From Edwards' perspective, the wedding felt different in ways that were uncomfortable, not modern. He wasn't alone in noticing it. Edwards believes senior figures saw the same red flags he did. And now, years later, he's no longer holding back about what he witnessed. What makes this bigger than one wedding day is what Edwards says happened afterward. He's given multiple interviews explaining that, in his view, Harry didn't just have a bad moment, he fundamentally changed. Edwards has said the Harry he once knew no longer exists. He described the earlier Harry as warm, playful, and easy to work with. That version, Edwards claims, disappeared.
And she stuck with them. So, going to Harry's and Prince William's wedding.
It's wonderful. So in fashion terms, has she turned everyone around and everyone's a fan now?
Without question. Without question. I think, she's a star.
And Russell, do you think that she's turned everybody around?
Yeah, I think so.
In its place, he says, was someone distant, guarded, and unhappy. That's not gossip. That's his long-term personal observation after decades around the royal family. Edwards has also commented on Harry's life in California, saying he believes Harry now overestimates his influence. In Edwards' words, Harry is no longer a central figure the way he was in Britain, but simply another celebrity in a crowded space. That realization, he believes, has been difficult for Harry to accept. Most controversially, Edwards has shared his belief that reconciliation with the UK is unlikely. He has said that if Harry ever wanted to return fully, the situation would be complicated, not by the institution alone, but by Meghan's resistance to royal life as he understands it. That's Edward's personal view, based on what he's seen. And this is why Edward speaking out in January 2026 matters so much. For years, Harry and Meghan presented themselves as victims of relentless media pressure. That narrative shaped global opinion. But Edwards is offering a different perspective. From his experience, the press wasn't acting unfairly. They were being deliberately shut out. Journalists who had covered the royal family respectfully for decades suddenly found themselves treated with open hostility. Whether people agree with Edwards or not, his testimony challenges the simplified story many accepted without question. And once that version of events cracks, the debate gets louder and far more complicated. From Arthur Edwards' point of view, that wedding wasn't about being mistreated. It was about sending a message. He believes the setup was designed to push the British media aside and make their work as difficult as possible. That's not victimhood in his eyes. That's control, and it speaks volumes about the mindset behind the scenes.
You know, I don't know whatever it is when you grind up, drink too much, I don't know. But you do, but this is just, it's really sort of, the price he's paid for it, I think, is too much. But, you know, we don't forgive people, do we? We just cancel them and that's it, you know, and that's sad, really.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of
people would disagree with you there.
different opinions about Prince Andrew. But I tell you what I do think is amazing is that relationship
Arthur's given us the Christian viewpoint.
Edwards has repeatedly said the personality shift he witnessed in Harry felt sudden and permanent. In his experience, Harry didn't slowly drift away. He changed fast. Relationships that had been positive for years were cut off, and people who had known Harry long before were suddenly treated like strangers. Edwards says he watched that isolation happen in real time. He saw it in Manchester. He felt it during the wedding. He experienced it again on the tours that followed. From restricted access to tense environments, Edwards described a pattern that, to him, shattered the fairy tale image completely. Let's be clear. The public watched the wedding in May 2018 and saw a dream scene, a glowing bride, a smiling prince, perfect visuals broadcast worldwide. But Edwards was there behind the camera, and what he says he witnessed was very different. He saw photographers pushed back hundreds of feet. He saw 800mm lenses being used, while official photographers stood just feet away. He felt the cold atmosphere and the lack of cooperation. And during the carriage ride, the most iconic moment of the day, he says Harry turned away, deliberately denying access. To Edwards, that wasn't coincidence. It was symbolic. A couple focused more on signaling defiance than sharing joy. And when you add that moment to everything that followed, he believes it tells a clear story. Edwards says the friendly, approachable Harry he knew for decades disappeared. In his words, the transformation never reversed. The warmth was gone, replaced by distance and frustration. He describes the royal engagements that followed as the most miserable of his career. This is why Edward's speaking out now matters, not because everyone has to agree with him, but because he was there for all of it. The Manchester moment, the wedding day, the tours that followed. His perspective comes from decades inside royal life. In Edward's view, this wasn't a fairy tale gone wrong. It was a carefully managed image hiding uncomfortable realities. And now, years later, he's finally saying what he felt all along. So the real question isn't whether the wedding was difficult from his perspective. The real question is how much more happened that he's choosing not to say publicly. Photographers like Arthur Edwards remember exactly what they witnessed. And now, the world is hearing a version of events that looks very different from the polished story we were sold. If you want more deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Was this really a fairy tale, or something far darker beneath the surface?